It was 3:17 in the morning when she heard the rocking chair start moving. She hadn't owned a rocking chair in 11 years. She had gotten rid of it after her daughter's accident, donated it, watched it leave the driveway in the back of a stranger's truck. But there it was, the sound, unmistakable, the slow, rhythmic creak of wood on hardwood floor, coming from the room at the end of the hall. She lay in bed and didn't move for 47 minutes. When she finally found the courage to open that door, the room was empty. But in the corner, near the window, was a doll she had purchased at an estate sale 2 weeks earlier. A doll she had set facing the window. It was now facing the door. It was now facing her. And its mouth, she was certain, had not been open when she bought it. She called her sister at 4 in the morning, shaking so hard she could barely speak. Her sister told her she was tired, that she was imagining things. She wasn't imagining things. We'll come back to her story. But first, let me tell you about the objects themselves. Because what happened to this woman is not unique. It is not rare. It is one account among hundreds, among thousands, stretching back centuries, across continents, across cultures that had no contact with one another, and yet told eerily identical stories. Objects that carry something with them. Something that does not leave when you ask it to. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel documents the cases that mainstream media won't touch. The accounts that get buried, dismissed, and quietly filed away. The stories that the people who experienced them can barely bring themselves to repeat. Tonight we are talking about haunted objects, cursed objects, possessed objects. Call them what you want. Every culture on Earth has a name for them. And every culture on Earth has learned, usually the hard way, to fear them. We are going to cover 6 of the most well-documented cases in recorded history. Some of them you may have heard of. What you haven't heard is the full story, the parts that don't make it into the documentaries, the details that were left out, because the people who experienced them didn't want to be publicly connected to something so deeply, fundamentally disturbing. I want you to keep one thing in mind as you listen tonight. Every single one of these objects exists, right now, somewhere in the world. Some are locked away, some are in museums, some are in private collections whose owners refuse to discuss them, and some are sitting in antique stores, in estate sales, in thrift shops and flea markets and online auction listings, waiting for someone who doesn't know what they're looking at to bring them home. Let's begin. Segment 1. The Dybbuk Box. In Jewish mystical tradition, a dybbuk is one of the most feared entities in the spiritual world. It is not a ghost exactly. It is not a demon exactly. It exists somewhere in the terrible space between those two things. A dybbuk is a restless, malicious soul, one that has been denied passage to whatever comes next and has decided with great and terrible intention to find a living host instead. They are attracted to objects, particularly enclosed ones. Boxes, cabinets, containers with lids that close. In 2001, an antiques dealer named Kevin Mannis attended an estate sale in Portland, Oregon. The sale was for the belongings of a 103-year-old Holocaust survivor named Havila, who had emigrated from Poland and spent the last decades of her life in the United States. At the sale, among the ordinary items, furniture, kitchenware, old books, there was a small, ornate wine cabinet, a beautiful piece. Old wood, carved panels, roughly the size of a briefcase. When Mannis expressed interest in it, Havila's family pulled him aside. They were visibly distressed, almost frightened. They told him that the cabinet had belonged to Havila since before the war, that she had brought it with her from Poland, that she had kept it locked her entire life, and that she had made her family swear, repeatedly and with great emotion, that after her death it would be buried with her. The family had not honored that request. They were not, they explained quietly, willing to place it in the ground. They were willing, however, to sell it. Mannis purchased it. He was a curious man, an antiques dealer by trade, and he was intrigued. He brought it to his shop and opened it. Inside he found the following: a 1925 American wheat penny, 2 locks of hair, one blonde, one black, bound with cord, a small granite slab etched with Hebrew letters, a dried rosebud, a single golden wine cup, and a small cast-iron candlestick holder holding the remains of a candle that had been burned down to almost nothing. He thought it was interesting, a curiosity, a collector's piece. He cleaned it up and gave it to his mother as a gift. His mother had a stroke that same evening. Her left side went partially numb. When she was stable enough to communicate, she was given a letter board and asked to spell out whatever she wanted to say. She looked at her son and pointed to letters one by one. N-O-G-I-F-T, and then S-C-A-R-E-D. She refused to have the cabinet in her home. Manus took it back. He put it in his shop's basement. That night he had a dream so disturbing that he woke at 3 a.m. unable to breathe. A hag, ancient, hollow-faced, moving through darkness toward him. He felt her hands before he saw her, cold, incredibly cold. He described it later as feeling like being touched by something that had forgotten it was ever warm. The following day, 2 of his employees, independently, without discussing it with each other, approached him separately and said they'd had terrible nightmares the night before. Same dream, the same hag. Manus began trying to get rid of the cabinet. He gave it to a series of people over the following years. Each person returned it or begged to return it within weeks, some within days. One family of 4 reported that within 48 hours of the cabinet entering their home, all 4 of them dreamed identically of the hag, including the 8-year-old child who described her in perfect detail without being told what anyone else had seen. Every single owner reported the same cluster of phenomena. Nightmares of the hag, the smell of jasmine appearing from nowhere with no source, the smell of cat urine appearing separately with no source, shadow figures seen in peripheral vision, electronic equipment malfunctioning, a persistent feeling of being observed, and in several cases, unexplained physical symptoms. Hair loss, bruising with no cause, a strange film appearing over the eyes that doctors could not explain. The cabinet eventually came into the possession of Iosif Nitsky, who documented his experience extensively before selling it to a museum owner named Jason Haxton. Haxton experienced severe physical deterioration while in possession of the box. Welts on his skin, blood appearing in his urine, his eyes began to change color. Haxton consulted with Jewish rabbinical scholars who told him the only way to neutralize the Dybbuk was to reseal it and encase the cabinet in wood from a Shemitah tree. He did so. The box now resides in a private museum in Las Vegas, locked behind glass. Museum staff do not handle it directly. Visitors are allowed to view it but not approach. Haxton still owns it. He still sleeps with the lights on. When asked in an interview whether he believes the Dybbuk is still inside, he paused for a very long time before answering. "I believe," he said finally, "that it is still inside, and that it is still angry, and that the only reason things are currently stable is because it has decided to wait." Segment 2, Annabelle. Forget the movie entirely. Set it aside. The real Annabelle was a Raggedy Ann doll. Cloth body, yarn hair, button eyes, the kind sold in every toy store in America through the 1970s. Completely ordinary in appearance. The kind of thing that collects dust in attics and sells for 50 cents at garage sales. In 1970, a nursing student in Hartford, Connecticut named Donna received the doll as a birthday gift from her mother, who had found it at a secondhand store. Donna kept it in her apartment, which she shared with another student named Angie. Within a few weeks, both women began noticing that the doll was moving. Not dramatically, nothing that could be captured on film or pointed to as undeniable, just repositioning. Arms that had been at the doll's sides would be crossed in its lap. The doll would be in a different room than where they'd left it. They would come home from class and find it sitting in a chair at the kitchen table. Then the notes started. Small pieces of parchment paper, the old-fashioned kind with rough edges, appearing around the apartment. The messages were always brief, always handwritten in what appeared to be a child's script. "Help us. Help us." Donna and Angie searched the apartment. There was no parchment paper anywhere in it. Neither of them owned any, neither had purchased any, and they had no guests who might have left it. The handwriting matched neither of theirs. A medium was brought in. She told the women that the spirit inhabiting the doll was that of a young girl named Annabelle Higgins, 7 years old, who had been found dead in the field upon which the apartment complex had been built. Annabelle, the medium said, was lonely. She was lost. She had taken a liking to Donna and Angie. She only wanted love. She only wanted, in the medium's words, to stay with them. Donna and Angie gave the doll permission to inhabit it. That night, Donna's friend Lou, who had been deeply uncomfortable with the doll from the beginning, who had refused to be in the same room as it when possible, woke up in the apartment's spare room, unable to move. His body was completely rigid. He could not speak. He could not turn his head. He lay there in the darkness and felt, with absolute and horrifying certainty, something moving across the floor toward him. Something small. He felt it reach the bed. He felt it begin to climb. He felt the pressure move up across his legs, his torso. He felt small hands, unmistakably, distinctly hands, small and cold and purposeful, wrap themselves around his throat, and then he blacked out. When he came to, Donna was standing over him. There were scratch marks on his chest, 7 of them in 2 parallel clusters, as though made by small fingernails. They burned like fire and healed, abnormally, within hours. Ed and Lorraine Warren, the demonologists, were called in shortly afterward. Both of them refused to leave the doll in the apartment. Ed Warren looked at it for a long time before speaking. Then he said, "A non-human intelligence is here. This is not a little girl." The Warrens transported the doll themselves, wrapped in a white cloth, placed in the back seat of their car. During the drive, Ed Warren reported that the car repeatedly swerved of its own accord, the steering wheel jerking violently. He kept a bottle of holy water in the vehicle. He used it repeatedly. Annabelle now resides in the Warren Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. She sits in a locked glass case. The case is marked with a notice that reads simply, "Warning, do not open." A priest who visited the museum once picked up the case and shook it. A provocation, a demonstration of skepticism for the visitors watching. On his drive home, he lost control of his car and nearly died. He attributes the incident, to this day, to the doll. A young man on a separate visit reportedly pressed his face against the glass and mocked her, tapped the glass, laughed, made a show of not being afraid. He was killed in a motorcycle accident before he reached home. His passenger survived. When asked what had happened, the passenger said the young man had seemed suddenly agitated on the highway, distracted, like he was trying to look at something that wasn't there. Segment 3. The Bassano Vase. In 1988, in a small village outside of Naples, Italy, construction workers renovating an old estate uncovered something buried beneath the floorboards of a back room. It was a carved silver vase, roughly 15 inches tall, ornate and beautiful, clearly of significant age. When the estate's owners had it examined, experts estimated it had been crafted somewhere in the mid-15th century. Inside the vase was a piece of parchment. It read, translated from Italian, "Beware. This vase brings death." The estate owners put it up for auction. A pharmacist purchased it for a significant sum. He brought it home. He placed it on a shelf in his study. He admired it. He told his wife it was one of the finest pieces he'd ever owned. He was dead within 3 months. Unexpected illness. No prior symptoms. His doctors were baffled. The vase passed to a member of his family. Dead within months. It passed again. A surgeon this time. A healthy man in his late 40s. Dead. An archaeologist. Dead. Each death was sudden, each victim had been in apparent good health, and each had occurred within a few months of the vase entering that person's possession. No conventional medical explanation connected them. Italian police eventually intervened and confiscated the vase from the 4th family. Authorities attempted to donate it to multiple museums across Italy and Europe. Each museum was provided with the documented history of the vase. Each museum declined. No museum in the world has ever accepted it. The Bassano vase was placed into police custody. It was catalogued, or so the official report states, but no catalog number has been made publicly available. No photograph of it has ever appeared in a verified public record. No researcher who has attempted to locate it in the Italian police archive system has received a response. It has not been seen since 1988, It has not been destroyed because no one, apparently, is willing to touch it. Somewhere in Italy, in a storage facility the public does not have access to, in a box with no label, the Bazzano vase is sitting, waiting. Segment 4. The Crying Boy Paintings. In the 1950s, a Spanish artist named Bruno Amadio, working under the pseudonym Giovanni Bragolin, produced a series of oil paintings depicting young children with large, sorrowful eyes and tears running down their faces. The paintings were mass-produced and sold cheaply across Europe through the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. They were extraordinarily popular. Millions of copies were sold. At one point, they were among the best-selling prints in Britain. And then the reports started. Firefighters across England began noticing something. In homes that had been destroyed by fire, completely gutted, walls collapsed, possessions reduced to ash, the crying boy print was intact, sitting in the wreckage, unburned, frame intact, the child's face staring up from the soot, untouched. The Sun newspaper ran a story in 1985. The reports flooded in, house after house, fire after fire. The painting survived when nothing else did. But more disturbing were the accounts from homeowners themselves, people who had purchased the painting and reported that fires started in their homes shortly afterward. Small fires, large fires, catastrophic fires. An abnormal number of crying boy owners had experienced house fires that the Fire Investigation Service could not explain. The pattern was consistent enough that the Sun eventually organized a mass burning of the paintings. Thousands of people mailed in their copies. They were set alight in a public bonfire. But here's what the newspaper reports didn't follow up on. The children in the paintings were not invented. Bragolin had painted real children, orphans, primarily. Children from the streets of post-war Spain. Children with no families, no records, no documentation. One researcher claimed that Bragolin had admitted, late in his life, that one of the primary subjects of his series, the young boy he returned to most often, the one with the most reproduced face, had been deeply traumatized when Bragolin found him. The boy never spoke. He was believed to have been involved in a fire that killed his parents. His name, some accounts claim, was Don Bonillo. Several years after Bragolin stopped painting him, a young man matching the boy's description was found in the ruins of a crashed and burned car outside of Barcelona. He was identified as Don Bonillo. The wreckage was completely incinerated. He was untouched. Segment 5. The Busby Stoop Chair. In the north of England, in a small village called Thirsk in North Yorkshire, there is a pub called the Busby Stoop Inn. Inside that pub, for most of the 20th century, there hung on the wall a plain wooden chair. An ordinary chair. Uncomfortable-looking, dark wood, nothing remarkable about it. A sign below it read, "Do not sit in this chair." The chair belonged to a man named Thomas Busby, who was executed in 1702 for the murder of his father-in-law. His last request before his hanging was to eat his final meal at his favorite chair in his favorite pub. It was granted. As he was led away, he reportedly cursed the chair. He swore that anyone who sat in it would die. Beginning in the 20th century, records of deaths connected to the chair began to accumulate. A Royal Air Force pilot who sat in it during World War II was killed in his aircraft the following morning. 2 Royal Air Force officers, on a dare, sat in it in the 1960s. Both were dead within hours, killed in a car crash on the road outside. A mason who sat in it went home and fell from the roof he was working on. A delivery man who sat in it in the 1970s died in a car accident. Each account documented individually, each death verified. The pub's owner eventually contacted the Thirsk Museum and insisted they take the chair. Museum staff refused to handle it directly. Using ropes, they mounted it high on a wall, too high to sit in. It remains there. The museum does not advertise the chair on its main signage. The story is told quietly to those who ask. No one has sat in the chair since it was installed on that wall. Museum staff walk past it every day without looking at it. Segment 6. The Woman and the Doll. We come back now to the woman from the beginning. The rocking chair sound, the doll facing the door. Her name has been withheld at her request. She submitted her account through this channel's contact address 4 months ago. She has since submitted 6 follow-up messages. She purchased the doll at an estate sale in rural Georgia. It was a porcelain doll, Victorian style, roughly 18 inches tall, in a white dress. The estate sale was for a woman in her 90s who had no surviving family. A lawyer administered the sale. He told her nothing about the doll's history because he said he didn't know it. She brought it home. She placed it in her guest room on a shelf facing the window. That night, the rocking chair sound. The doll facing the door. The following night, she woke at 3 a.m. to silence. She lay still. Then she became aware that something had changed in the room. The quality of the darkness, a density to the air near the foot of her bed that had not been there before. She did not move. She did not speak. She breathed shallowly for 23 minutes, she said, by the clock on her nightstand. Then the density lifted. The air changed back. She turned on every light in the house and did not sleep again that night. The doll was back in the guest room, on its shelf, facing the window, as she had placed it. She began researching the estate. She found that the previous owner, the elderly woman whose belongings had been sold, had herself acquired the doll decades earlier. She found one photograph of the elderly woman's home, taken by a local historical society in the 1970s. In the background of the photograph, on a shelf in a hallway, was the doll. It was facing the camera. The historical society member who had taken the photograph and submitted it to the archive had written a note in the margin of the original print, which the researcher who located it shared with our viewer. The note read, "I did not pose the doll for this photograph. I had not noticed it when I entered. When I went to leave, I looked back. It was facing me. I left the house quickly. I did not return." Our viewer has since attempted to donate the doll to 3 separate institutions, including a historical society and an antique dealer who specializes in Victorian pieces. All 3 declined without explanation. She cannot throw it away. She has tried. Each time she places it in a garbage bag and sets it outside, she finds it back on the shelf the following morning. She has moved it to her garage. She sleeps with her bedroom door locked. Her most recent message to us was 3 weeks ago. She said everything had been quiet for 10 days. She said she was beginning to think it might be over. We have not heard from her since. Here is the thing that connects every account in this video. Every single object was chosen, purchased, welcomed through the front door of a home, placed on a shelf, admired. Whatever occupies these objects, whether you call it residual energy, demonic attachment, a restless soul, or something we don't yet have a name for, it does not force its way in. It waits to be invited. The estate sale, the antique market, the thrift shop, the auction listing with the photograph that somehow doesn't look quite right, even though you can't explain why. That feeling you get sometimes, looking at an object, that something is wrong, that you should put it down and walk away. Trust that feeling. Because the moment you bring it home, the moment you cross that threshold with it in your hands, the invitation has been made. And in every single case documented tonight, in every account spanning centuries and continents and cultures, nothing that was invited in ever truly left. Be careful what you bring home. Subscribe if this is the kind of truth you're looking for. We'll be here. We always will. Sleep well.